8 common challenges expats face in Paraguay and how to overcome them. My name is Gerald Summer and I'm here with Enzo Melgarejo. We're having a good time creating these videos for you guys, and we wanted to start out this video talking about one of the most important points of living in Paraguay: the language barrier. Now, when you come to Paraguay and you come from a non-Spanish speaking country, you know it's challenging. You have to adapt. And one of the key points that I wanted to highlight is that Latin America is not Asia. What do I mean by that? Latin Americans speak Spanish mostly. Yes, there are exceptions like Panama, like certain cities in Argentina, and even in the Caribbean, but as a rule of thumb, most people in Paraguay don't speak English, right? I would say probably 80 to 90%. I mean, that's the combined population, but the younger generations, like people like you, Generation Z, I'm a millennial. Obviously, the younger people speak English. Why? They are watching a lot of Netflix, they're on YouTube, they're on TikTok, right? So they have access to all these platforms where they can learn English much more easily than, say, your parents could, right? Or let's say my parents if I were from here. So things are changing in Paraguay for sure. Right, there's a higher percentile of English-speaking people, but it's the younger generations, Generation Z and millennials. So when you come to Paraguay, it's important for you to know that if you want to live here for the long term, you have to learn Spanish. There's really no way around it. Like anything you do here, let's say you want to go to immigration or you need to do anything, you have to speak Spanish. When you walk into these government offices, almost nobody speaks English. Sure, some people do a little bit, but everything is in Spanish. Spanish is the official language of Paraguay. And this doesn't just apply to immigration services that you may need to complete. It applies to everyday things. If you want to make a reservation at a restaurant, you have to speak Spanish if you call in, right? Of course, you can use WhatsApp and Google Translator. That's all fine. But if you want to fully integrate, you have to speak Spanish to succeed here. What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree totally on that. And it's also important to remind people that Paraguay is the only country in South America that has an indigenous language spoken by more than half the population. So we're talking about Guarani. Guarani was a language spoken by the indigenous people living in this area, and the language was adapted later to the descendants of the Spanish and the Guarani, which is Paraguayans. Nowadays, a lot of people speak it, but you are not going to have any trouble if you don't speak it. In Asunción, almost everyone speaks both languages, so you're not going to have any problem speaking only in Spanish. Although in the countryside, it is more common to find people who only speak Guarani, but that percentage of people is decreasing every day. More and more people are speaking Spanish, and yeah.
Adapting to the local culture is another challenge expats face and have to overcome. Now, if you come from a very modernized, Americanized country into Paraguay and you're like, wow, everything is different, and things here operate much slower than in other countries. And you can see that when you go out to eat at a restaurant, like things take time. They take more time. If you come from America where everything is ready in like a few minutes, you know, it doesn't work like this here a lot of the times. And of course the culture has to do with that. A lot of you guys want to relocate to a country in Latin America because you want to escape the fast-paced environment. And Paraguay is one of the perfect destinations where you can find your new home and have this high level of like just living in a chilled environment where people are not overly driven by like capitalism, right? Even though it's changing, and you've pointed out in the video how Paraguay is a capitalist country. However, the mentality here is different, that people really value community life, they value their quality of life, and in my opinion, that's a good thing because you have to have balance to be happy. Yeah. You know, you can't just have that drive to work and work and work and that neglect all other aspects of life. We had seen what that decision led to in other countries. So in my opinion, Paraguay has a good balance, and the government of Paraguay is very capitalistic minded. We talked about the tax system a lot and how foreigners can blend in here and enjoy the tax benefits, but the culture is different. So if you come here with an open mind and just listen and just feel what this environment has to offer. And a lot of people who come here, they're like, wow, this is interesting. You know, I never thought that I'd take an hour to eat out, for instance, right? Yeah. Because you become part of the environment no matter where you are. Even if you're different, if you come here, you're going to blend in, and eventually you will become one. It's how it works everywhere. And in my opinion, that's a good thing. I never enjoyed eating out in America because the quality of food is bad. The service is great in America, no question about that. But just the whole dining experience totally does not appeal to me. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, as a Paraguayan, I would say we like it to take it easy, you know. We like to be relaxed, a more slow-paced kind of environment. I think it's because we give things a more humane touch, you know. It's what's living in communities, like you treat others with respect, with care, kindness, and it's just that just reciprocates on a general level. So I find it quite satisfactory, you know. When you go out to a dinner or a restaurant, the bartender sometimes goes out of their way to ask you, what do you like and what do you do for a living and where are you from? It's just, it gives you a more humane touch.
Yeah, 100%. And the interesting part is that these simple things have gone extinct in a lot of countries where people don't even make the effort to ask anymore. It's just, hey, how are you doing? Okay, I take your order, I give you the food, and goodbye. That's it, right? The human element is missing in a lot of Western countries, for sure. But here in Paraguay, it's not. You can have a casual conversation with anyone, anytime. I'm not saying it's going to happen every time, but generally, people are very open to it. Yeah. You know, they take their time to listen, and foreigners are very much welcomed here in Paraguay. Bureaucratic processes can be difficult to navigate in Paraguay, and expats have to overcome these processes. As we've talked about in the previous point, that you have to speak Spanish to get a lot of things done here. If you want to do the things yourself, right, you have to speak Spanish. Now, one thing you need to understand about Paraguay is that Paraguay is not super technologically advanced like the US, Australia, or even Western Europe, which comes with pros and cons. The good part is that the government here is not very particular about a lot of things, right? So they're not very strict about enforcing a lot of laws. They are not very strict about certain processes. However, getting residency, getting your cedula, registering your vehicle, these are all processes that take probably longer than in many other countries, right? I mean, especially, you know, if you want to get your cedula, there's quite a bit of process involved with it. However, as we've talked about, pros and cons are present everywhere, and you just have to navigate these pros and cons, right? And what you can do is you can hire a qualified relocation agency like Nomad Elite to help you navigate these challenges, including your application for a residence permit, cedula, or driver's license. How difficult is it to get health insurance in Paraguay?
Well, it's pretty difficult if you're a foreigner because there's so many private options. You don't know which one to choose from. What I am going to say about is never go public. Public hospitals, public clinics are very much abandoned. They don't have the best attention, and perhaps you will not be attended in the correct time. You know, you can go there and they'll give you a turn for here in 1 month. The fever's gone already at that time, you know. But yeah, I would go private if I could, most definitely.
That's what I did too. I got a prescription for my glasses. I paid 130,000 vorani, which is maybe like $17 or so. You know, the same prescription would have cost me a lot more in a developed country or in Europe, you know, in North America. So, and it was very quick. I got the appointment the same day. I went there. Now, that's the good thing when you go private in Paraguay. You can get appointments quickly and you can get it done very quickly. I had healthcare done in Spain and I had to wait for a very long time. Even though it was private, I had to wait for like 2 weeks to see the doctor, even though it's private, and I pay out of pocket, no insurance, nothing. I still had to wait for 2 weeks. Public hospitals are not that great here, right? But for simple procedures, you can still consider them. If you want to get an eye exam done, or if you just want to do like a checkup, right? You can do that at public hospitals. And I've gotten certain treatments done too, like I said. So I have really nothing to complain about at this point. And if you want to pay more, go to the private hospitals. If you want to be in a nicer facility, choose a private hospital and you're good to go. Another challenge foreigners have to overcome when living in Paraguay are road and transportation conditions. Now, we have talked about this privately, how transportation is not the newest in Paraguay, and it's not so reliable either. I mean, if you take a look at the buses, they are not like top-notch buses by any means, right? And we wonder why, why isn't there more money for it? But everything has a reason, right? So we don't recommend using public transportation in Paraguay unless it's like during our summer when it's not too hot, because these buses don't even have air conditioning, right? So this is going to be brutally hot. So they have the windows open, but with the heat here, I don't recommend it. When it comes to the roads, I mean, there are quite a few good roads here. It's getting better. It's getting better, but it's getting better slowly. It's a slow progression. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Well, public transportation is a no for me. It's also about the quality of the buses. There's a lot of bad smell. You don't know if the buses are in good condition. You don't know if the brakes are good. And then we're talking about buses that are from the 70s, from the maybe even 60s. I'm talking that old. And road conditions don't help the bus either. Every 2 or 3 blocks, there's a huge hole in the middle of the street that eventually breaks the suspension of the bus, or stuff like happens, and you got no ride home. So I would recommend taking Uber. I find Uber here especially cheap, around $3, $4, $5 maybe. You can cross the entirety of Asunción. Another option is Bolt, which is around 40% cheaper than Uber. So you got those 2 apps. And the other option is get a car. That's the best option. Gas is really cheap here. You're gonna find that having a car in Asunción is very comfortable, especially with the heat in summer. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, I just want to take it a bit further. When you spoke about the heat in the summertime, it's unbearable. Let's get real. You don't want to be walking outdoors in the summertime here. If it got like 40 degrees or 45 degrees, you're not going to be out there walking. I mean, maybe in the early mornings, like 5 a.m. before the sun rises, that's okay. But during midday, no way. That's not possible, right? Yeah, so you have to rely on Ubers, or you can purchase your own vehicle. And as we've pointed out, public transportation is not the best in Paraguay. Access to certain goods and services may be limited in Paraguay. Due to Paraguay's geographic location, it is just more expensive to ship things here. I've spoken to Rebecca about this, how she ships certain items from Florida into Paraguay and how she pays $20 per kilogram. I'm sure you're familiar with this concept, right? Now imagine if you need to ship something that's very heavy, you're going to pay a lot of money because it's just so far away. Also from the ocean, that's another issue, so how can things come here?
They come from Buenos Aires upriver, and they get loaded onto another boat, a barge specifically, and it goes up the river 1,600 kilometers, and that's how you get it.
Yeah, so it's expensive, right? Because there's so many processes involved to get the goods from one point to the other that it's just so expensive to ship things here, right? Whereas if you want to ship stuff to, I'm sure, Panama or Colombia will be a lot cheaper. Not just because of the proximity, but the fact that these countries have a coastline, right? And that makes a big difference, I think. So what else can we say about services? I mean, services are actually quite affordable here. If you want to get a haircut done, if you want to get a manicure done, pedicure, if you want to get a massage done, any of these services is much cheaper than in the US or in Europe. And in my opinion, the services are better, like people take more time. And in terms of tips, I'm not sure if we ever talked about this, but I typically tip 10% if I'm happy with the service, right? But it depends on what you get, and it always depends on the level of satisfaction that you have. What are your thoughts here?
Well, on tipping, I would say it's not really that common, but people, if you do it, it's taken as a courtesy, it's taken as a sign of goodwill. So it will be appreciated by any person that gave you a service. On the topic of imported goods, I see this as an opportunity, There are many stuff there are many products and goods that are in Europe, that are in America, that Paraguayan people would really like to see on their stores. And they would like to see some of these imported goods on the supermarket shelf. So I see that as an opportunity to bring perhaps imported goods from America. So and also regarding the high shipping costs, that is going to soon change. There is this road called Via Oceanica, which goes from Chile to Brazil, and it crosses through the middle of the Chaco region. And so basically it connects the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean through a road, and connects the ports of Santos and I think Iquique or Antofagasta in Chile. So that is going to considerably bring down costs of imported goods.
Expats must overcome banking and financial challenges in Paraguay. Opening up a bank account in Paraguay can take much longer than in many other countries. And we're speaking to you from personal experience. In other countries, let's say you immigrate to the US or you are an American looking to open up a bank account, you can do it in less than a week. Sometimes you can do it the same day or in 2 days. In Paraguay, it can take much longer to get a bank account open up. Another misconception that's out there, which we have addressed on this channel multiple times, is that people believe that you can open up a personal bank account without residency and without cedula. This is not true in most cases. Most banks won't take you unless you're a citizen like you or unless you're a resident like me. Then they take you. It is true that there are certain accounts that you may be eligible to open without residency and cedula. That is true. But having residency is just a way to go. It gives you more options, and banks will be much more willing to take you on as a resident than a non-resident. What are your thoughts?
I think that if you don't show if the bank don't trust you that you are going to stay in the country and that you are going to keep your bank account healthy on finance terms, they are not going to give you any money, and they are not even going to let you open a bank account. Banks here are really, really strict. I used to work on a bank. They are really strict. Regulations are tough. Yeah, and it's all there in place to prevent money laundering. There is a big effort to prevent money laundering, and it all has to do with strict regulations and controlled by the central bank. So yeah.
I remember how easy it was to open up a bank account in Asia between 2011 and 2013. I was able to open up bank accounts without an apartment rental contract, without proof of income. I just walked into the bank with my ID. Back in the day, that was my passport. They didn't ask if I was a resident, nothing like that. I was just able to open up all these accounts across Asia, and it was so easy. But nowadays, if you want to open up a bank account in Malaysia or in Vietnam, you have to be a resident in a lot of cases. And the same is also true for Thailand. Now, all of this has changed, and now we're here in Paraguay in the year of 2024, and of course the rules of 2011 don't apply here. They no longer apply, unfortunately. Expats must overcome weather and climate challenges in Paraguay. Paraguay is a tropical country located in the heart of South America, where you can experience crazy high temperatures all year round. It's possible to have a day with 45 degrees Celsius even during Paraguay's wintertime. It has happened, right? During spring, autumn, very normal. And in the summertime, these high temperatures are very, 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 very common. So that's interesting. A lot of our clients are looking to leave their countries because of climate issues. They don't want to be living in the cold weather. It's not convenient. You can't go out. You can't do much. And here in Paraguay, it's hot all year round. Now, if it's too hot, you also can't do too much outside, right? So I think the ideal temperature is 25 to 35 degrees. That works the best. But if it goes to 40 or 45, you can't do anything either. Yeah. And make sure you're always hydrated in Paraguay. This is very important. If you're outside, always carry a bottle of water with you. You should wear a hat to protect yourself against the sun. Put on sunscreener and be covered up if need be, because the sun can be really unforgiving here, right? One of the good things about Paraguay that I have seen, and I'm speaking about comparison here, right? For instance, in Asia, there's a lot of air pollution because it's very industrial. Here, there's less air pollution in this city. Now, it may be different in Ciudad del Este. I don't know about that, but here, there's not a lot of air pollution, which is good. So you have clean air most of the year. Now, there has been forest fires, right? There have been forest fires this year, which was a very rare occasion. Yeah. I've been told by our workers, right, that it's not very normal for this to happen, but they did burn forests in Brazil and Bolivia, and that, did cause some air pollution here, but that's rare. That didn't happen the years before from what I've heard. What's your experience with that?
Well, I've never seen anything like what happened this year. A lot of the northern forest got burned. Apparently it was an agricultural land, and a small control fire got out of control, and it ended up burning an entire national park. Pretty sad, but the people responsible are already getting a judgment passed on. So yeah, another thing to consider is sometimes the weather can go from hot, cold really fast. 2 days ago, the weather was around 16, 19. Today, it's around 35 degrees or something like that. Right. It gets from one point to the other pretty fast. And also rains. This is a subtropical rainforest. So it rains a lot. But it feels like healthy rain, like it's refreshing. But sometimes it rains really, really too much. So you gotta be also careful with that.
Are there any other challenges that you must overcome before moving to Paraguay? If you're interested in obtaining a residence permit in Paraguay, purchase real estate, or just immigrate to this country, we would love to help you accomplish your biggest challenges in Paraguay. Please book a consultation with us. You should see our website displayed right on the screen. We've also added a link in the description of the video. Thank you so much for watching, and we see you on the next video.